Well, for analysis on this, I'm joined now by Euan Healy, editor-in-chief of our polling aggregator Europe Elects. Morning to you, Mr. Healy. Thanks for being with us. Now, the European People's Party has been the largest political grouping in the European Parliament for 20 years or so. There were projections that this might be shaken by particularly the far right, by populists. Your polling seems to suggest not. Why the change?
It's an interesting question, and I think what first needs to be said is that EPP will absolutely stay the largest party. There's no chance that they're going to lose ground completely, and Manfred Weber will most likely be the next European Commissioner. However, looking at the reasons for the collapse of the European People's Party, we're looking at sort of things to do with a general trend across the European Union of a decrease for the sort of centre-right. But the reason, a sort of uptick in the recent, in this month's polling compared to the previous month, difficult to say exactly what that is, but we're looking at things like antagonism towards the European Union is down on what it has been at some points over the course of the last European Parliament, and with Jean-Claude Juncker being an EPP commissioner, that means that there's a less antagonism towards the EPP as a whole.
Is that something that perhaps Brexit has prompted? People suddenly worrying that actually it's not as easy as it looks to get out of Europe?
There's definitely something to that, and I think people are seeing the way that the United Kingdom government has been relating to the European Union through the process and how challenging it's been for them. And so that's sort of put a dampener on a lot of European Union, sort of anti-European Union rhetoric across Europe. And that's something that we're seeing, sort of, for example, in the popular opinion polls which came out at the end of last year by Eurobarometer, which is the in-house polling company for the European Parliament. And what that suggested was actually that trust in the EU was at its highest level for about 10 years, and people felt that their voice was mattering more than it has done ever before in the European Union.
What about immigration? It was thought that that would be one of the key issues for the elections this year. Is that fading away? And is the message of the likes of Matteo Salvini in Italy and the Five-Star Movement and then the AfD in Germany, is that slipping away also?
There's definitely some evidence to suggest that, and the same Eurobarometer poll that I talked about showed that immigration concerns are way down on what they were in sort of 2015, 2016, the height of the migration crisis. And I think a lot of populists across the European Union who sort of rose to fame on the back of a lot of people's struggles and challenges with with immigration policy across the European Union have seen they're struggling to keep that as a central issue and having to expand onto other issues because the support of simply the lack of anti-immigration sentiment is slipping away.
This is a bit of an existential question for you, but is there a danger sometimes that polls like these can lead to complacency for voters who'd go out and vote for the European People's Party, which then ends up changing the result because those of the populists and the right wing will end up going out on voting day? Yes,
I mean, absolutely. That's absolutely a concern. And I think one of the big challenges, a challenge in any election for any party is making sure that their voter base turns out. And that's the problem, particularly with the European elections, where we see and have seen in the last couple of elections a much lower turnout rate than you would get in a regular national election. And that will be a challenge for a wide variety of parties. And the S&D have often struggled with that particularly. And I think the polling tends to suggest that the right-wing populists will also struggle with that when their voter base tend to be less likely to turn out for the elections.
The S&D that you mentioned there, of course, the Socialists and Democrats. Listen, great to talk to you. Thank you very much. Euan Healy there, editor-in-chief of Europe Elects.